So today I'm going to talk about how to overcome anxiety. And I am honestly an authority on this because in my life I've explored part of my karma was, being a fearful person. And I had cancer and I had kind of frightening medical issues. And I've lived in countries where I've been alone and almost kidnapped. And I've been in a lot of situations which has given me the opportunity to confront fear. And so I just want to tell you the most potent way to overcome anxiety is to accept death. Right? So for me, it's like when my mind tries to make me anxious about cancer coming back or about anything I feel in my body, if my mind catastrophizes it and says, oh, it's cancer, it's the worst case scenario, I'm dying. The most potent way to overcome that is just to say, okay, well, if I'm dying, I'm dying. Okay, if today's my day, today's my day. If you're afraid of flying, but you really want to go on a trip, and your mind starts to catastrophize, right? Oh, like every little turbulence is like the plane gonna crash. Well, it is what it is. If it does, it does, right? Just accept it. Accepting what the mind considers the worst case scenario, which is death, takes care of all the symptoms of the fear of death. And it's like a surfer, right? The soul is like a surfer. The soul wants to go out into the wild and ride the wave and have the adventure. And the surfer knows that there are sharks in the water, especially people that surf for like their entire life, 60 years, like in Australia and these places. They know there's danger in the water, but their heart, their soul, like wants to go on the adventure. And so if you want to actually live in your soul, you have to be like that surfer and you have to say, hey, well, I know there's stuff in the water. I know stuff can happen, and I accept it. If today's my day, today's my day. So really, like when you meditate on death, when you proactively meditate on death, only then can you really fully live in the energy of your soul, because man, catastrophic thinking and anxiety can keep you in a really tight box that the ego thinks is safe, but actually the soul, right? The soul is aching to break out of that box. And so a lot of the symptoms in our lives, a lot of anxiety actually is simply that you're not allowing yourself to leave that box. You're not allowing yourself to leave a marriage that's wrong for you. You're not allowing yourself to express yourself in a way that's genuine for you. So how do you overcome like caring what people think about you? Somebody asked me that in the comments of one of my videos. How do you overcome what people think about you? It's just the same thing. It's like, well, I know I am in the current of my soul. I am in this current, this fast moving current. I want to do these things, explore these themes. I want to, in my life, people did not want me to get divorced. People did not want me to leave my law career. People did not want me to travel alone, to do a lot of things that I've done, but that's what my soul wants to do. So to me, I don't have to do any calculus because I can feel the momentum of my heart and I just go with it. And if that means that people are going to judge me, I mean, people, I took a really deep dive into my subconscious, like Carl Jung style, like Red Book style. And people were like afraid for me because I was really exploring like some gritty, dark themes. And they were like, I think you're mentally ill. What are you doing to yourself? And I'm like, thanks for your opinion. I know you care about me, but I know what I'm doing. Like, I know that being driven, being guided into this deep dive is part of my soul's purpose. It just is, you know? And now I have a map of the soul, and now I have, because I've gone through really intense things, like I am an authority on how to come to the other side, and how to relax your mind, and all these things. So you just have to know that you have to do a little math, right? It's like the pain of staying in your box is a lot more painful than the little pains that you'll feel when people judge you, right? When people don't believe in you. I can't tell you, people in my life also, they don't see any logic in what I'm doing, right? They don't see any logic in it, because when you're in your soul's when you're in your genuine, authentic, unique path, often you cannot plan it out, because the only thing you see is the next step. The only thing you see is the next step. Other people don't see the next step. I know the next step, and that's all I need to know. And I have a vision, and I have a feeling of what it's leading me to, and I trust that above all else. I trust that above what my parents think, about what people think. To me, the pain of trying to mold myself to be acceptable to other people is way too much it's too painful. It's not worth it to me. And I also, on that note, I have decided that I don't want to suffer. I don't value suffering. I don't value martyrdom. I don't value all of those things that the subconscious values. And that's part of the spiritual work, is to realize that those payoffs are not actually payoffs, right? So when it comes to anxiety and fear, I really get it. I get it. I have confronted death. I have experienced, in some case, in a way, like my worst fear, because before I had cancer, I was always terrified of cancer. And I had no logical reason, right? It's a karmic thing. I had no logical reason. Nobody in my family had it. And I experienced it. And first of all, I want to say the actual experience of it is not nearly as bad as the fear of it, because it's resistance that makes you uncomfortable. When you're totally at one with an experience, even death, you are in complete ecstasy. Hey, if today's my day, today's my day. If this thing's going to take me out, it's going to take me out. Now, does that mean, so this is interesting. How do you simultaneously hold seemingly paradoxical ideas like, okay, if this disease is going to kill me, it's going to kill me, and I know for sure that my body can heal from anything? How can we hold those two things at once? It's actually not a paradox, because the acceptance of death is just kind of fast forwarding yourself through all the potential anxiety and just saying, okay, hey, it is what it is. I'm an eternal being, and if my soul wants to leave, my soul wants to leave. That just deep acceptance brings you joy and ecstasy. And let's talk about the fear of flying. I was on a plane a few months ago that broke in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And they didn't announce it because they didn't want people to panic, until people realized that the plane had turned around, because we were all watching the map, the international map, that if you go on a long flight, and we were like, wait a minute, we're going back to Madrid. What's going on here? So somebody commented that something was on fire. They could see something on fire out the window. So, okay, I totally felt fear. I totally was panicking. My nephew was being born too. It was like a very emotional. My nephew was literally like being born, the first baby in our family. Like, as I'm on this plane, so they're sending me like updates, and like it's a very emotional experience for me. And but I decided to meditate on death, and I said, oh, look here, we have another fear that I've always dreaded. And I just accepted it. I was like, you know what? If today's my day, today's my day. Maybe I'll come back as my nephew before he comes out of the birth canal. Who knows? If today's my day, today's my day. I cannot jump off this plane right now. And the acceptance of it, it took a little bit. I cycled through emotions. It took a little bit. But man, I'm telling you, if I can do that, you can do it in relationship to social anxiety, dating, your health, being on an airplane, being in whatever situation, traveling alone. And obviously you don't want to be like reckless, and you want to take care of yourself. But like, I've been in situations where I have been in other countries abroad alone, not speaking a language. Like, I was in Bulgaria, and taking an Uber, I felt fear. But I was like, you know what? I need to get to this place, and I can't walk. And so I'm going to have to take an Uber. Taking an Uber, when that plane landed, I had to take an Uber at 1 a.m. by myself into a 30-minute drive into Madrid. And I was like, again, I was feeling the nervousness of it, but I was like, hey, for whatever reason, like, I'm here. It's 1 a.m. I'm 30 minutes away from a hotel, and I need to take an Uber. So I'm going to do it. So I'm going to meditate on death, and I'm going to say, hey, if this guy wants to kidnap me, like all those catastrophic fears that come up, just accept them. It's actually not hard. Because what are your other options? You could sleep in the airport. You could avoid your fear. You could never get on the plane. But like, I'm at a point in my life where I'm that surfer, and I'm going to go surfing. I'm going to continue to travel in my soul's current, and I'm going to have to deal with my mind as it arises. And meditating on death is the most potent and direct way to bring yourself peace. And remember, the pain and pleasure pathways in the brain are the same. Tantra, right, is really being completely at one with. It's not about like positions of sex and all of that. It's like, if I could be totally at peace with the fact that this plane is broken and accept death, that in that moment, I am completely at one with reality. Therefore, I am in ecstasy. That's where ecstasy comes from, being at one with what is. And again, when it comes to your body, like, if you have a diagnosis, that doesn't mean you have to accept the diagnosis, but just accept accept the worst case scenarios, fast forward through them, accept death. And then ironically, there's so much less resistance in your energy that you will heal much more quickly if you want to heal, if your soul wants to stay here. So I get it. I have dealt with the themes of, again, okay, here's another thing that I've dealt with. I can see on the other side. I can see beings. I have had interactions with things that most people that would shit their pants, okay? And what I normally see is high energy beings, but when I'm working on a deep subconscious state, I would wake up at 3 a.m. and I would see a literal out picturing of the demon inside of me. When I was I talked about this in another video, when I was in the woods in Georgia, a disincarnate being literally ripped my covers off of my bed and tried to scare me, and I had to stand up and be like, nah, motherfucker. Like, that's another way I've confronted fear. It's like to realize who I am. Even a demon is like a mere shadow compared to your light. I've had a person physically attack me, and I shined a light that came from my heart, and that person literally passed out and fell off of me and essentially had an exorcism. So I know what I'm talking about here. I'm not just talking shit. Meditate on death. By the way, when the world tries to scare you in all these ways, when your mind tries to scare you, that's a sign that your soul is like really wanting to come here in a very full way. And so all those forces, really, it's your own inner forces, and you could call it an outer force, the trickster, the opponent, the Satan, whatever you want to call it. But when it tries to get you like that, just make it give you strength. That means you're here to live, to be a nuclear presence in this world, whatever that means for you. Whether that means to be a surfer, whether that means to revolutionize the education system, whether that means to have a beautiful family and change your generational traumas, whatever that means for you, let it empower you. Let it empower you and walk through it knowing who you really are. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a beautiful day.